this because I couldn't figure out how to have the camera on me. I can't see the screen. My name is Christian Reiber, and we're going to talk tonight about how to sort of get started with cooking healthy. And so if we feel like it's complex or going to be difficult or going to be a pain to clean up or whatever, it's much less likely that we'll even get started. And if we're trying to make healthy changes and we don't cook, it's extremely difficult for those changes to be effective. Cooking is kind of an integral part of overall wellness. So, some basics. When we take the time to have set aside to make food, we can make twice as much extra, but that double amount of food doesn't take even close to double the amount of time. So this is a real time saver by simply making more food than you think you will eat in that sitting. So we're going to cover just a real basic 3-course meal, and the ingredients for the salad and the dinner are essentially interchangeable, but we'll get to that, and then we'll talk about how to make your own chocolate at the end. All very simple stuff, all, and I'll show you as we go here, all from bases that can be kind of manipulated to give you infinite options at what it ends up tasting like. So first off, start by getting one of these. If you want to save yourself a ton of time, and I mean more than anything time, but really maybe save your wrist too. But this little chopper device can be used on garlic. It takes me 7 minutes to slice and dice garlic with a knife. It takes 3 or 4 seconds with this. So there's a drastic difference in the amount of time it'll take you to get things prepared. So I strongly encourage you to scoop one of these up. I think it cost me 12 bucks. So they're very affordable. And again, they save a countless amount of time. So one of the ingredients in a lot of the food that we eat is cauliflower rice. So all it is just cauliflower florets. Put them in the chopper. And there's our rice. It's super fast, it's super easy, and buying cauliflower whole is extremely affordable. Buying riced cauliflower is extremely expensive. So this can save you a ton of time and quite a bit of money too. So the more we chop, the finer the rice is. Again, this is just cauliflower, it's not rice. But you can see how fairly quickly we've got a nice little bed of rice here. So that can go in salads, it can go in savory dishes, whether you bake them or cook them on the stovetop. Either way, it's just an awesome way to add some texture to your meals. And you're not eating white rice, which is fairly unhealthy and contains some somewhat useless carbohydrates. This is full of nutrition and doesn't have those inflammatory properties. So that's the chopper. Wanted to start with that because it's integral in making all that we do. So first part of the meal is the salad. You can either make up a salad dressing beforehand. You can kind of see it's mostly olive oil, maybe 2/3 to 3/4 olive oil, and then just 1/4 of vinegar. You guys can see that. And then there's onion powder, garlic powder, Italian seasoning, So this is just a real basic homemade Italian dressing. So you can either start with that, shake it up, put it in the bottom of your salad bowl, and then cut up an avocado and mash it into your dressing. Okay, so after that happens, you're left with this avocado mash, and it's seasoned, it's salted, it's the salt goes in the dressing too. I failed to mention that before. But this is your base for all salads. So you can put anything in here. You can slice up some avocado, dice some celery, cauliflower, broccoli, you name it, any veggie you can imagine, just cut it out, cut all the veggies up into different sizes, throw it into your mash, and you're good. So a lot of people think that salad has to be with greens, and that's fine. You can also chop up or leave whole some greens and throw those in there. So any way that you like to eat your salad, this is just a great way to start, have a base, and then add anything to it that you want. It allows for a lot of variation. It's never the same salad because it's being kind of thrown together all at once. And so it helps keep from kind of getting bored of the food you're eating. So that's the salad. I like to start with either dressing and avocado or oil, vinegar, seasoning and dressing. Either way, you end up with a very similar mix. So again, I like to make more than I will be eating at one time, have a little bit of leftover. And once you combine the avocado and oil, it will turn brown a lot less quickly. So it'll save in the fridge, just mix it back up when you take it out and throw your veggies, greens, etc. in there to make your salad. So that is the salad. Did you guys have any questions or thoughts about that so far? Okay. Moving right along. So then when it comes to the main course, if you prefer cooking on the stovetop or cooking in the oven as like a baked dish, the process is essentially the same, okay? And so the base ingredients for either are onion, oil, salt, and garlic. Those go in all dishes. If you hate one of those things, you're gonna leave it out. So on the stovetop, we take those 4 ingredients. The garlic will be diced and set aside. That does not go in the pan right off the start. What does go in the pan right off the start is onion, and I'll email this stuff to you so you don't have to remember it. Start with onion. I like to cook more than I think will make sense for the recipe, because when we cook the onion down, it will drastically reduce in volume. The onion chunks will kind of shrivel up, turn a little bit clear and start to brown. That's when we know the onions are ready and we're ready to add more ingredients. So we start with onion, oil, and salt. Choose the amount of salt based on your taste. For oil, I like to use coconut oil or avocado oil for cooking, either of those two. Olive oil I save for dressing and other non-heated stuff. So again, we start on the stove top with our oil, our onions, and our salt, cooking the onions down until they're clear and they start to turn brown. Okay, that's the first step. We have diced and chopped the veggies that we have on hand. And again, it goes back to that same principle with the salad. It can be any veggies, peppers, Squash, I guess, wouldn't work as well here. It works better in baking, but I'll get to that. But cucumbers, zucchini, there's a ton of different ideas. You can just kind of chop everything up into different sizes, different textures, and that creates an amazing treat for your palate. So after your onions are cooked down and they're clear, they're starting to turn brown, that's when you take the rest of the thing that you diced, and those veggies all go in. You start with thicker chunks and tough greens or coarse greens. Start with those first and stir in with the onions cooked for about a minute, and then add the diced or finely chopped veggies and your garlic to that mixture. Stir it in, cook for another couple minutes. By far the longest part of this process is cooking the onions down. Once everything else is in there, the cooking process is really fairly short, because the focus is to get everything hot without making it mushy. So we want to still have a firm texture to the meal that obviously can be changed based on your taste. If you like it to be more firm, less cooking time. If you want it to be a little more mushy, more cooking time. So kind of critical when you're making this type of stovetop meal that you stay in the kitchen. Running out of the kitchen for just something quick can lead to turning your meal to mush. So that's on the stove. Pretty straightforward, but that process brings out a ton of flavor. A lot of people will start with their seasoning in there. I like to add the seasoning when I add the veggies after the onions are done, so that they don't scorch. And the seasoning choice you make will change the nature of the dish. So if you choose like basil and oregano, it's going to be Italian. If you choose curry and some ginger, it'll be a sort of Asian Indian kind of thing. If you choose coconut aminos, which is a safe soy sauce alternative, and so that's a Far Eastern flavor, or you could use cumin, paprika, and a little bit of red pepper for a south of the border taste. And so you can use exactly the same ingredients for all of these things, change up the seasoning every time, and it gives you a completely different experience. So that's the stovetop. So we use a lot of those same principles when we're baking. We're gonna, one step that's taking out is starting with the oil, the onions, and the salt. We're gonna take the oil, salt, seasoning, and a little bit of vinegar, and we're gonna mix that in a large mixing bowl. Okay, so we'll take that mixture, and it's just sort of sitting in the base of our bowl. Then we dice up what we want to go into the baking pan. We like to just cut any kind of squash into chunks, small chunks, and throw those in there with a bunch of cauliflower or riced cauliflower. And then you can literally use any other veggie as well, and base the firmness of the texture on the amount of time that you cook it. So first we'll get everything chopped up. Second step, we're going to put everything we chopped up into that oil mix and get all of it coated well with the seasoning, the oil, and the salt. Okay, so that is our base. We're going to grease our baking pan with coconut oil, butter, or ghee. We want to try to stay away from trans fats and shortening and stuff like that. So we'll use those safer oils. So we mix all of our ingredients in the oil mixture and then dump that into the greased baking pan. Throw it in the oven at 370 for approximately 17 to 20 minutes before we check it with a fork. So just grab a fork, stick it into one of the thicker chunks. If you're making like a squash bake, find one of the thicker chunks and put your fork right through it. If it sails right through and it's very tender, perfect, it's ready. Take it out. If it's still firm enough that it seems almost crunchy, then put it in for another 10 minutes and check it again. And eventually that will come out to the consistency that you want. And what we like to do when we take it out of the oven, we'll serve it up and then use our fork to mash the squash into a sort of mashed potatoes kind of consistency and eat it that way. But there's a ton of different ways to do it. Again, the seasoning you choose determines the style of the meal. And so if you use curry, again, we have that Indian dish, and you don't have to use Indian or Asian vegetables for this to make it authentic. Just make it fun, and you'll be amazed at how many different types of vegetables can still taste great, regardless of the seasoning you choose. So make it south of the border, make it Indian, make it Asian. Just pick one, try it out, and see how it tastes, do a little bit of experimenting. These principles will help you keep from killing the meal. It's not easy unless you're literally leaving the kitchen most of the time during meal prep. It's not easy to mess this up. I can't even think of a time in the several years that I've been cooking more that I had to throw anything away because it tasted bad or whatever. So really just the focus is keep it from burning and it should be great. So those are the main course, whether you're on the stove or in the oven, they're really very similar. Sometimes I will cook down my onions and brown them before putting them in the bake. So you can add that step. I'm giving you the quickest, easiest, most simple way to get to mealtime. Okay, so any questions about the main course? Okay, so now for the best part, chocolate. So to make chocolate, you only need 3 ingredients: cacao or cocoa powder. They're the same thing, except cacao has not been processed. It hasn't been heated. Cocoa powder has much less nutrition because a lot of the nutrition's been cooked out of it. So I use cacao. Tastes exactly the same. So there's no difference there. This is how you make chocolate. First, cacao powder. Second, maple syrup or honey, or another safe and healthy sweetener. And then coconut or avocado oil. Okay, so those 3 ingredients in differing amounts each. Hang on. What happened here? Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. Thanks for bearing with us. So those 3 ingredients in differing amounts determine the sweetness and the thickness of the chocolate you make. So The less oil in, maybe if you're using a liquid sweetener, the less of the liquids you use, the thicker it'll be, the more like a sort of no-bake brownie. And then the more you use it, it'll get more runny to the point where it could be like a drizzle. Okay. And so just experiment a little bit with the sweetener to see how much you need to make it the sweetness you prefer. Mix it up, taste it, and then add more as you go to make it how you want it. Optional ingredients for the base of your chocolate are a little bit of vanilla and some cinnamon, and then also some unsweetened non-dairy milk to make milk chocolate, if that's the type of smoothness you prefer. Some people like to add a little bit of salt for that kind of sweet, salty chocolate taste. And if it's coarse salt, then you get that kind of crunchy awesomeness from the salt. So then from there, we have our base. Okay, so that base of chocolate can be used to make a ton of different cool stuff. I like to mix it up with unsweetened coconut, some chopped nuts, sometimes some fruit, some dark chocolate chips, seeds, that kind of stuff. Mix it all together and then spread it out in a baking pan. And sometimes I'll mix up a second real small batch of chocolate and have it real runny so that I can drizzle chocolate on top. So there are literally a zillion different ways that you can make your chocolate with this. You can put anything you think would taste good with chocolate in this, and it will be fantastic. So again, it's very simple from the start, but in the end, it can seem incredibly complex, incredibly difficult to make, and it never will be. It'll always be easy, and the results are incredible. They're based on your taste. You're not buying anything that's already been made and then hoping it's right for you. You get to start from scratch. It's simple, it's easy, it's super fast. Prepping dessert typically takes me 3 to 4 minutes, and then whipping it together another minute. Like it really can save you a ton of time. And eating dessert this way is guilt-free. There's nothing here that's highly inflammatory. There's a ton of nutrition in all of this stuff. So you don't have to panic that you're eating chocolate and it's going to cause you to lose out on making your goals or whatever. So I kind of kept it short and sweet, like my chocolate is, but please, if anybody has any questions or thoughts or needs some direction, you know, I'm easy to reach via text, email, or Facebook message, and I'm easy to find at Wellness with Christian on Facebook. So did you guys have any questions or further thoughts?
I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Where did you get the cacao powder? And is it organic? And does it matter?
It wasn't very easy to find. With cacao, I like to get organic because then they're not allowed to use chemicals in processing.
Okay.
So in order to find that, and it's like this, something very similar to this can be found at like Walmart and whatever. It's far more expensive. And this way I got organic at a lower price. So I'm not a huge fan of Amazon because they don't get taxed and there's some other things going on there that kind of battle with my principles, but
Yeah.
they have this sort of bulk ingredient at a far, far better price point. So I hope that answers the question.
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Okay.
I like your non-recipe recipes because it's easy. It'll be fun to experiment and it'll be easy to throw things together.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so what this helps us do here at home is like we open the refrigerator. If something's really ripe and ready to go, we throw it in, and so nothing really ever goes bad in the fridge because we're in control of what's going in the meal, and it's super easy to pick the stuff that's, I don't want to say overripe. Overripe typically doesn't taste great, but if it looks like it's close to the end, then great, chop it up and throw it in. Especially like wilted greens. I know people who simply throw them out if they start to get wilted because they look bad. Well, you can chop them up and throw them in your stir fry. They're going to wilt in there more. So it doesn't matter how are, you just kind of throw them in and they add an amazing bit of texture. So that's the key with all of this is it's like you're using the stuff that you just have on hand. You don't have to worry about the stress of a recipe where it's like we believe that a recipe has to be followed by the letter or it won't come out right or won't taste good or whatever. This way, to heck with the recipe. Let's just throw some stuff together, make sure it's seasoned well enough. So to give you an example, if I'm using Italian seasoning in a dinner, I'm going to put minimum tablespoon of Italian seasoning in there to give it a ton of extra flavor. Herbs are super healthy food, and so there's no real negative to adding in extra seasoning. It tastes like restaurant food, tastes like a 5-star meal, and it took you 7 to 8 minutes to prep and about 9 minutes to cook. It's like this.
You've got Rachel Raby even with her 30-minute meals.
We're like, oh my God, it's so good. And so, yeah, exactly.
And it's better for you.
Yeah. So super healthy stuff, really pretty easy. And then if we're, baking a big pan of stuff, we're going to have some leftovers. If we're cooking on the stovetop and making sure we're putting enough ingredients in there, we're going to have leftovers. So some people don't like leftovers. Great. But we didn't overcook the veggies, so the leftovers are still great. They aren't just this mush, unless that's what you're looking for. And so that's it just gives you a ton of freedom. It takes a ton of the stress away, and you can just kind of start with these bases and create an infinite number of combinations from that based on what you have hanging around or what you scoop up at the store. What did I skip over? I think that's most of it. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining in, and I hope this helps you, start cooking a little more at home. And one thing we can pretty much guarantee, if you're cooking all your meals at home and you're using healthy ingredients like this, you don't have to be on a diet. You will simply graduate towards your ideal weight restricting yourself. You're not eating food that is bland or yucky or whatever. You're eating super delicious food that is mostly guilt-free. And that's another thing I wanted to mention. I use a lot of oil. So as long as you're using healthy oils, you can use quite a bit of it. You can see how oily this mixture is. That's okay, because if you remember from previous Zooms we've done, healthy fats cannot be stored as fat in the body. There's no mechanism to turn healthy fats we eat into body fat. So what they actually do is they strip away unhealthy fats from the body. So we've been taught that all fat is fattening, and that is absolutely not true. So it'll take some practice, but as you do practice, you'll kind of get used to using more oil and not having that kind of cringy feeling of, oh my God, this is going to be fattening. And so that's just not the case. And same with the avocado, super healthy oil in our mixture here. That will strip away fats from the body. It will not leave deposits. So a little bit of unconventional thinking around oils, but it's because we're using the healthy ones and not the canola oil, soybean oil, and these others that are highly inflammatory. So anything, does that raise any questions or thoughts? Okay, great. So thanks again, guys. Have an awesome night. I'm going to stay on here with Tyler for a second and chat, but I truly appreciate your time. And if I don't already have your email, please put it in the chat and I'll get that from Tyler. But thank you very kindly, and I hope you guys have a great night.
Thanks, Christian.
You're welcome.